Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I have a question for us to honestly consider today. Um, Something I've been contemplating for quite some time. If you had, let's say, if you had been born in the 1920s, right, um, and were of military fighting age by 1940, would you have enlisted and fought in World War II? Okay, so my whole life, I grew up watching World War II movies. I basically have seen every single World War II documentary. Studied all the battles. And if you had asked me up until 2 years ago, I would have said absolutely yes. I would have signed up. Would not have missed an opportunity to participate in this glorious human effort to defend liberty, okay, and justice and all that good stuff, okay. But I've changed my mind the last 2 years, right? The reason why I've changed my mind is first I said, hey, look how much lying the U.S. government has done since just 2020. Okay, so if they're lying to us this much now, right, where we have the ability to kind of like keep track of them, we can like videotape them and post on the internet. If they're lying that much now, imagine how much lying they were doing back in the 1930s, right? When people really weren't paying as close attention to what the government was doing. So that's the first thing that pops off in my mind, that realistically, we really don't know what happened leading up to World War II because, victors get to write history, okay? So that's the first thing that comes to mind. Now, one of the things I thought to myself is, hey, I'm saying that with hind vision, right? Because I have the benefit of today's internet, of being able to observe how much lying the government does. I would not have had access to that information back in the 1930s. So the people at that time, yes, they were all enlisting because they didn't have access to all that information. They just knew what the government was telling to them. So I can see that point, right? I definitely would not have been able to question the government. However, um, you know, like I said, I grew up kind of enamored by World War II and the heroics of World War II. But at the same time, I absolutely hated FDR and his New Deal policies, okay? Um, if I had grown up, if I was born in the 1920s, right, early 1920s, basically through the 20s into the 30s, the things that I would have had right in front of me on my plate was number one, 1934, National Firearms Act, right? So 1934 would have the NFA would have just passed. So I got the NFA. There's the Income Tax Act. Then there's the Social Security Act and the Federal Reserve Act. Okay, so four things right there: NFA, Income Tax Act, Social Security Act, Federal Reserve Act. Okay, so that is information that I would have had. I would have been able to see it develop in front of me right there. I would have been living through it, and I guarantee you, I would not have liked it. Okay, even if I somehow, let's say I liked one or two, which is not likely, there's no way I would have liked all four of them, right? I definitely would not have liked the NFA. Definitely would not have liked the Income Tax Act. Now, with the Income Tax Act, they were very slick. When they initially, if you look at the first income tax return, basically the way they set it up is you didn't have to pay any taxes unless you were like ultra rich, right? So that's how they kind of snuck it in on the population, right? So initially they made the income tax so only the ultra wealthy would pay any income tax, and then little by little over time they made everybody pay income taxes. Okay, so they might have, that's how they snuck that in. So maybe they might have got me to bite on the Income Tax Act, by virtue of saying, hey, look, you gotta be ultra rich. You're not ultra rich. You don't have to worry about paying taxes. I think I would have seen through that because I see through it today, right? But I definitely, there's no way they would have been able to sell me on the NFA. Social Security, definitely would have not liked that. The idea of the government running my retirement plan, definitely would have been against that. Federal Reserve Act, they might have been able to sell me on that because you really got to dig into that and you got to be knowledgeable about economics to be able to pull that apart. Now, I have an accounting background, right? I did accounting for many years. Just because I studied accounting and I also studied economics, they when you study those things, they really don't explain to you, how the Federal Reserve System is a Ponzi scheme, right? They don't explain that to you. So I really had to, even in today's day and age, I had to do a lot of digging to understand how the Federal Reserve System works. I mean, it kind of became obvious when the government started borrowing $1 trillion at a time, and I covered this in prior videos. 1,000,000,000,000 seconds is 31,000 years. So the number trillion is so huge that money doesn't exist anywhere in the universe. So there's no place to borrow that money from. At the point where they're borrowing $1 trillion, it's obvious that they're just printing that money up, okay, diluting the existing currency. So that might not be something I would have been able to figure out if I had lived in the 1920s and 1930s. I mean, most accountants and economists didn't even figure that out until the 1990s, right? It wasn't until, hey, we have $1 trillion deficit here, but they said, wait a second, $1 trillion, you're borrowing $1 trillion. So it wasn't until that point that people were able to figure it out. So they might have been able to sell me on the Federal Reserve Act, but they might have been able to pull the wool over my eyes with the Income Tax Act. That, hey, it's just a tax on the super rich. They may. I mean, I don't think they would have got me on Social Security because I don't like the idea of the government trying to run my retirement. I don't remember how they introduced it, but I know 100% I would have absolutely hated the NFA. So on the NFA alone, I would have been very anti-government. And then there was also the Miller case, right, where basically basically they arrested a guy for having a short barrel shotgun. So I probably would have been aware of that, and that probably would have had me hating the government. After careful analysis, right, I think that the opinion that I have held for most of my life, right, for the first 49 years of my life, that I would have enlisted and participated in World War II, I think is incorrect. I think I would have refused, primarily because of the NFA, National Firearms Act, but also because there's a good chance I might have also picked up on the other 3 things. Okay, but in total, 4 things that stand out. In hindsight, looking back: NFA, Income Tax Act, Social Security Act, Federal Reserve Act. And here's the problem with the Federal Reserve Act is not so much in and of itself, because the way that works is, the way it's supposed to be set up is when people put up assets at their local bank, and the bank creates money, right? So you take a mortgage on your house, you give the bank a mortgage, you give the bank the deed to your house, and they create money. That's how money is supposed to be created. You put up real assets. That's no different than you own a gold mine. You dig up some gold. You bring the gold to the bank. The bank basically gives you a receipt for the gold that they're holding. That's money, right? That receipt for the gold that they're holding is money that then you can use to trade. Okay, so there's no different if you're creating money off of a gold asset or real estate. It's being backed by a real asset. The problem with the government is that the federal government does not put up real assets to create money. They just have this idea of they're going to put up debt, meaning they're putting up their ability to tax in the future and raise money to pay this back. So that's where the Federal Reserve went wrong. Okay? The federal government should not have the ability to create money off of debt. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Would you have fought in World War II? Talk to y'all soon.